Welcome back, Mastercrafted Gaming fans. Kyle here to bring you one last video for the 3rd edition previews. Today we have the Herd and the Varangur. The Herd are now a theme list of the forces of nature, which I think makes a lot of sense compared to what they had in 2nd edition, the types of units that they could take. Centaurs, for example, makes a lot of sense there. The Beast of Nature makes a lot of sense there. Even the Shaman and the Druid are pretty similar. So now they've got some access to additional units that they didn't have before. I think that the Forest Shamblers and the Tree Herder, for example, are going to be a really nice complement to this army as well. Let's start off, though, with their unique units and take a look at the Tribal Longspears. And this unit is one that's similar to a lot of other spear units. They've got phalanx, but in 2nd edition, you kind of had to make the decision of whether or not you wanted to take phalanx or thunderous charge. And now in 3rd, they come with both. And if you look at this unit, really what it has, the 4 up to hit in melee and then the 4 up defense is pretty standard for every type of phalanx unit out there. And then they also have speed 6, but with Pathfinder and Thunderous, this makes them kind of set apart. It's a unit that has a little bit more tools for that similar kind of profile and 30 attacks on 4s than what other units have. And I think with some decent support, this is a really good core option for the entire list. The Herd are well known for being relatively squishy, but hitting pretty hard. And the Longhorns in 2nd edition were a unit that didn't really make a lot of sense for that. But now in 3rd edition, they've gotten a significant bump in their attacks, and that really helps them out in this criteria. So now they're hitting on 3 still, and they have Thunderous and Crushing 1 with Pathfinder. That makes them very efficient in what they do. And I think at this point level and what you can get out of them, the troop profile is very nice here. As a 2nd line kind of unit, that's a really good backup sort of thing that can come in after your initial wave is hit and really clean things up. So if you consider that you're able to put them into a position where they can take advantage of those attacks and not get attacked first, because that lower defense and that middle ground nerve is kind of a dangerous thing, so you got to be careful on how you play them. But when you actually get the attack off on them, they really have a place in the army now, because you're going to hit and the wounds are going to stick for sure. Next, we'll look at the Minotaur Chariots, and these are going to replace the Tribal Chariots from 2nd edition, and they have a little bit of a different profile too. So the Tribal Chariots were a lot faster, but they had lower defense and nerve, so that's the trade-off here. So unlike the other units in the army, these guys do see a little bit of change to a more of a defensive role, just because they've got a higher defense and they've got a higher nerve. Yes, there's a 3-point gap there, but they do have Fury, so as long as you protect them from shooting, you're probably going to be able to stick around in combat pretty well with these. And I think that the ability to have Strider on a unit like this is just absolute money. The speed is made up for it by having Wild Charge added in, so even though it's only a slower, kind of unit, when you have Wild Charge D3, you've got the ability to add a lot here. I think this is a really good qualifying unit for things that add a bonus to Wild Charge, for example. But at the same time, if you don't want to use them in that speed roll, I think the lower end profiles are really good for chaff too, just because of the height differences. You can kind of block stuff behind them. They have some pretty decent speed to be able to crack off those long range charges. They're going to be faster than your regular line infantry and get in there and do a lot of work. So I like this as the profile just because they're going to get stuck in. They're going to stick around thanks to Fury. They've got some pretty high nerve in general and a lot of really nice base size options here in the profiles that are available. So good unit. I think it's a good switch. Don't necessarily need the speed in the Herd just because everything else is pretty fast. Everything is at least speed 6 in the army, so it's a really good option. I think that when you're looking at these things, it just makes a lot of sense to get that offensive out there that can stick around and actually grind a little bit. All right, next up, let's look at a very staple of the Herd list, that is the Guardian Brutes. Now, these guys went more in line with what you would expect from the Herd, so they've taken a dial back on their defensive capabilities, but bumped it up on offense. So now they've got 30 attacks in that Horde profile, which is just nasty. When you've got the ability to throw in Fury to the same kind of situation, really good on them. And then obviously the Wild Charge is a nice addition as well. Speed 6 on a large infantry unit, that's going to put out a nice threat range. And then just like 30 attacks with that kind of ability. If you let this unit get off first on you, that's really gross. At that point level, that sort of 225 for the Horde, I think that they're really eligible to take some of the more offensive magical artifact upgrades as well. So if you want to throw in a Brew of Sharpness, this is the unit that could be really good with it. If you want to throw in a Nimble, this is a unit that could be really good with it. So I think that they have the ability to sort of get up there with, for example, the Whites on Undead, just with a quick magical artifact upgrade or a spell for Bane Chant. Lots of ways to do that and achieve that in this list. So really good offensive toolkit. I think that these guys are going to be very popular, and I'm excited to see some of the models that might be coming out for them in the future. It's just some really cool opportunities to get a nice offensive large infantry unit out there on the table. Last up for the Herd is a new living legend unit. This is the Fang. Now, this one is one of those units that is going to work where you dump it into combat with your other units, and then it grants an ability to the other units that are in that same combat. So it's going to have the ability to throw in vicious to any units that are in the same combat as it. Unlike the other heroes that we've seen that do this, that have the individual rule, I think it's kind of a dangerous thing, because if you countercharge the individual, then you have the potential to overrun it. This guy is a large infantry, Lycan, so it makes sense that he's going to be able to stick around a little bit better. And in order to further sort of reinforce that, they've got regen 4+ on this guy. So a really survivable hero that has some pretty decent nerfs, some good defense, good offensive capabilities, and putting nimble on it is just a really nasty combination. So he's going to be a really good option to throw in with other Lycans, for example. I think that's a nice supporting role that he could fulfill. But at the same time, if you just want to get vicious on another unit, this is a really easy way to do it. I think he could be zooming around the battlefield and kind of jumping in exactly where combats need supported, and that's a perfect role for him. And it's really good at that point profile. So that is it for the herd. Let's move on to the Varangur. For the Varangur, they are going to be the evil theme list of the Northern Alliance faction. So if you saw in one of the previous videos, I listed actually every unit that's in both of these factions. One thing that is critical to know about them, though, is that they cannot actually ally with any of the abyssal factions. So if you take any kind of abyssal things in your army, these guys cannot go with them. And I think it's very fluffy. It's a good push in that direction. They worship the old gods, and they are nasty barbarians, and I actually like them a lot. If you're collecting Northern Alliance, you've got the ability to sort of kind of cross between these two factions if you'd want to, and it's going to be a fairly easy way to do that. They get a lot of the good units from Northern Alliance, so really good options here, and then let's take a look at their unique ones as well. So many of those high attack infantry units lost a step on their attack profile in 3rd edition. They dropped from that 25 to 20, and for the Varangur, the Reavers did not. So they maintain that 20 and 25 attack in the troop and regiment, which puts them kind of in line with Night Stalker Reapers or the Soul Reaver infantry for undead. And one thing that I really like about the profile is that they swapped out Thunderous Charge 2 for Crushing Strength 1 and Thunderous Charge 1. So they've got the ability to sort of hit again in a second combat if they don't get taken out in the first one. That's further supported by the Life Leech upgrade if you'd want them to stick around. So if you don't think that they're going to get popped in one go and you can use them against other softer targets, it's a really good second line unit that can sort of get some damage out there, stick around for another combat, and then actually still be effective at that point in time. So really good second line unit, and it supports the real heavy combat focus that the army has in general. All right, let's take a look at one of the most controversial units in 2nd edition. That is the Fallen. And people didn't like these guys because they got all the rules. Crushing, Nimble, Pathfinder, all that stuff. And that's still the case in 3rd edition. But they are now a regular, so that really helps. In 2nd edition, the Clash of Kings adjustment made them lose Pathfinder, which really kind of just took them completely out of the list. So they maintain Pathfinder now, but now they're a regular. And I think at this point level, they're still a very offensive, capable unit. They are a really good unit for something like the Blood of the Old King, Crushing Strength upgrade, that sort of thing. So really potentially deadly hammer if you can get them upgraded to the right way. And then, that you can put them all over the board with what their speed is, what Nimble, Pathfinder. They're just a really nasty unit. They always have been. They always will, I think. So what they do is a very nice role within the army. Speed is a big thing for Varangur, and this is really one of the first units where I think speed really starts to show itself. If you want to go more of a grindy army with a mid-range speed, use Frozen. Northern Alliance is a good choice. Speedy army that hits you in the face and really gets the work done, Varangur is probably a good option. Keeping along with the speed theme, let's look at the Mounted Sons of Korrigan. Now, Northern Alliance players will probably really like this just because they haven't had the ability to take a cavalry unit so far. So now when you consider what the Varangur can do, here's a bona fide cavalry unit that can go into the army. They also saw one heck of a points decrease from what they were in 2nd edition. Yes, they're maybe not quite as punchy, but that kind of a discount is really nice. In an army that has a lot of fast units, these guys can really threaten a lot of different places on the board. And then you also have the ability to upgrade them with their different gifts that they can receive on top of the magical artifacts. I like that they kept the gifts in there. That was really a nice flavorful option for the Varangur in 2nd edition. So just to be able to see that on the 3rd edition equivalents is a really good thing for me. I think that the speed, along with the Frostfang cavalry, that kind of things, the Fallen units that are available, the Horse Raiders that are available, Chimera that's available, Lords on Frostfangs, that kind of thing. You could have a really nasty, hard-hitting, super fast force, and then at this point level, you can really take those extra toys that are available for your 3rd edition list. So really good option here. Just watch out for phalanx. That could really shut down an army like this. All right, now let's take a look at the Jabberwock. And in 2nd edition, I think this thing had some really cool rules with the feeding frenzy rule, but at that nerf profile that I had, it really wasn't as useful for that. But now when you bump it up to 15, 17, all of a sudden you can actually take advantage of that rule, but you gotta watch out for devastated. So it's kind of a trade-off. I like it though, just because you put a decent amount of damage on this thing, all of a sudden it's putting out some pretty significant offense. Adding the fact that it has nimble and strider means that in that monster-sized base, you can sneak this guy into some really nasty places. I see a really nice tactic being that you charge it into kind of a middle line unit, maybe regiment of spears, something like that. Get it to take a little bit of damage and then use a corkscrew with its height and its nimble to go into a unit that you actually want to attack. So really interesting capability here with the bump and nerve. Just a simple change like that makes this unit actually kind of, viable. I think that a lot of people might actually like to see this. It's thematic with the army and now has some pretty significant offensive output with nimble and strider too. Last up for the Varangur is the Magus, and this guy is your offensive support caster, and I like him because he's got a couple of really nice things that just aren't available in other factions. Number one being Blood Boil. That's not a spell that you've seen very often in any of the armies so far. He's got in his profile as an option. Also got the really cool ability to throw on, Bane Chance and different things like that to the units that you need it. But if you want to, Drain Life works really well with a specific mechanic called Transfusion, where you can transfer points of damage off of your Bloodbound units onto Draugr that are in your army. So these are your expendable sort of zombie-like Draugr enemies. And with that, you essentially get a free heal that you can throw onto, the unit that you don't really care about. Pair that with the Drain Life spell because the transfusion happens automatically and all of a sudden you've actually got some pretty decent healing potential. So no Ice Queen here, but at the same time, there's offense and healing potential. And in an army like this, when you take healing potential into consideration, it's really nasty. And then, like I said, Blood Boil is just a really good option because you've got certain things like the Jabberwock that you just did some wounds to, but didn't finish off. Blood Boil might be able to do that. So there's some really good combinations, I think, in this army. One of the better ones in 3rd edition, as usual, it's Varangur. They've still got some of their classic characters, things like that they can take, but the Northern Alliance units and everything that goes along with it are really good too. So nice to finish off that way. I was gonna do a fake out for you guys and pretend to have an Ophidia preview, but decided not to do that just because I didn't want to deal with the massive amounts of rage that would come from it. So that is it for the previews for 3rd edition. I will continue multiple different kinds of series that help support 3rd edition. I'll help show new releases and things like that because I think these videos have been very good for the community, very successful for everything that's going on with the excitement and hype that's going around this edition, and I want to keep that going for sure. So there will be many new things coming up. I just have to plan them and get them worked out so that I know exactly what I'm going to do, and then we'll roll from there. So I've enjoyed this entire series with you guys. I appreciate it. I want to thank all the different special guests that wanted to film and be a part of it. They were all wonderful and critical to having a really good product for everyone. Hopefully the excitement was all built up and you guys have this Uncharted Empires book pre-ordered because they're coming out very soon. They should be shipping next week. So yeah, thanks for doing it and thanks for being here, and we'll see you soon.